Hello everybody, once again, welcome to the car, welcome to the channel. We just went and saw a brand new film, as we do every single week. The film we saw this week was none other than the newest in the classic franchise, Ghostbusters. The film we saw tonight was Ghostbusters Frozen Kingdom. Without further ado...
Frozen Empire.
Yes. Sorry. They have trailers for like 5 different Kingdom movies coming out.
No, you're right.
You know, isn't the Godzilla Kong New Kingdom?
Yep.
Kingdom of the Monsters or something?
Oh, no, New Empire.
New Empire.
It's Empire.
And then it's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
And then, yeah. Sorry. Late night, as always. We went Frozen Empire. EJ, 1 to 10.
I'll give it a solid 8.
All right. I agree with you 100%. I also give this film an 8. Why did you give it an 8, DJ?
Honestly, okay, so a little bit to this is I just watched Afterlife for the first time yesterday. So this movie is like really recent. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be kind of relating to that and the original Ghostbusters as well, because this is an in-canon film. It connects to the rest of the series. So the first and foremost, it flows well from the other films. It's a good sequel. It does a good job of taking characters from Afterlife and moving them forward. It gives good roles and characters to the old Ghostbusters and brings them all together really well. Really fun, well shot cinematography, just great angles, great fun scenes, especially wide shots of the city and things like that. The characters are believable. The acting is really good. The direction is good. It's a really solid film. It holds it together. The plot is fun. There's good intrigue. There's good lead up. It's just really well done. The reason an 8, not higher, little tropey in predictable ways. There's a few things that it doesn't explain well that it should. Some things it over-explains a little bit. There's a little bit of that heavy exposition. Most of it's done well, but there's some issues I have. And another one is there's some characters that aren't used quite well or have some disconnect from the last film. Just a few. Overall, it's well done. There's just a few things. In spoilers, I can get a little more detail, but that's the big thing there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The film is really well shot. It's really well put together. It flows fairly well. There is a little bit of time in it where you feel like you kind of wish that it would move into the more climactic scene. But at the same time, I'm not going to go and say that it's like boring by any sense of the...
No.
But it's
like
very...
Dune.
It is a lot like Dune, so...
But instead of it going up and flowing, it just kind of slowly ramps in.
But it's a very good ramping in. It has good pacing for what it is. It kind of feels like the first film where you see them getting better, you see them going and doing all these different things. They have their tiff with the government, and then the big bad shows up in like the last third of the film. And it's a pretty quick resolution to the film. So in that way, it's kind of not that great of pacing, but for a fan of the franchise, and it feels like the first one. The first one is the best one so far.
This one feels... this is like not a retread of the first one, but follows a similar pacing and plot, but it deviates a bit on like characters is the big thing. It has a strong opening hook, and it has a conclusion that really feels like deserved, but the climax happens really fast. Much like the first film, where the climax comes and goes really quick. But the first film did it in a really fun comedic way. This one was like a lot more horror, which is fine. It's just a different way to do it.
No, and it's well put together. The visuals are very, very good. Obviously, they use a lot of CGI and things like that, but they actually did a really good job with the visuals in this one.
They look good.
Sony does a really good job with their CGI if they actually put effort into it. That's the frustrating thing about Sony, is either they have amazing visuals or they have very lackluster visuals.
I feel like it's like
films.
they get to a point where they're like, this film isn't going to do well, and they stop caring. This one, this is like Sony's baby. Like, they treat it like they care.
Yeah.
And it's a Columbia classic as well. So the studios are like really working hard to make this look good and feel real and believable. And it does. It feels like a real world. It feels like something that you can believe is a thing. There's only one weird thing. This isn't really a spoiler. It's like they're in New York. It doesn't really give a lot of reasoning to why they're there. They're just there. So that's kind of a weird thing.
They kind of tied into that with the last movie.
Yeah,
the ending of the last movie brought them to New York.
The last movie,
to be closer to Zedmore's company.
The last one kind of alludes to it, but then they're just kind of there. It's just kind of a weird thing. But that was really it in the beginning of the film. But it moves through it really well. Gives them like legitimate reasons to do what they do. Actually, one of my favorite points of this film is that all the characters have unique motivations for being Ghostbusters, and it doesn't go into a huge amount of detail, but it makes it clear why they're there.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Yeah, overall, recommend this film. It is a good film, and you do benefit from the larger visual aspect of it, but also
this is a good theater movie.
It is good.
It's got good sound, good soundtrack to it. It's got really good visuals, really good, like I said, wide shots, really great angled shots where you're seeing a lot of action in the peripherals of what's going on, and it uses that really well. So it's definitely worth seeing in theater.
Yeah, definitely. So recommend. Just like we recommend, if you guys like these videos, let us know with your comments in the box below. Leave us a like, subscribe if you like having weekly new movie reviews, and we also do another bit of variety of topics regarding entertainment, specifically in the film industry. So if that interests you, subscribe, share us with your friends. We always appreciate it. And without further ado, spoilers. I cannot believe that when we get to the ultimate climax, we see the entire city begin to freeze over and icicles bursting out of the ground, and the only people that got impaled was the crew from 2016's Ghostbusters. Awful cruel.
Oh, that hurts. So interestingly enough, I remember when Afterlife was announced and everybody was groaning and like, oh, we didn't ask for this and all that stuff. It's actually a fun film. And this one is a good follow-up to it. I actually like Afterlife better, but I think that's the same reason I like the first Ghostbusters better, because it originates these characters, gives them motivations, and a lot of times in sequels you retread some of the same trauma issues, and they do. In the first one, there's a lot of like coming of age and like growing stuff in Afterlife. And Frozen Empire, there's like the retreading teenage angst and things, right, a little bit. So there's a little bit of repeat there, but it does a really good job of kind of distinguishing itself as its own film by copying elements of both Afterlife and the original Ghostbusters. They kind of combine them together into a film. It's set in New York. It's in the original firehouse where they worked. They're like a team. They're ghost busting on a regular basis now. They've gotten a lot better at it. But it's like the core family is the Ghostbusters. Podcast is back from the last one. Right. He's kind of a side character at first, but he gets brought back more into it. What I was complaining about characters in the non-spoiler review was Lucky. Where Lucky, she just kind of thrown into the film, and I'm like, that's sad, because she actually was kind of really fun in the first one, like becoming, like I was expecting her to be one of the Ghostbusters, yeah. And she's just there, and she doesn't really do anything in the movie, and it's kind of sad because I liked her character in the last one. Phoebe is the other one that I had a problem with, where she's not. They don't utilize her science skills as well as they did in the last one.
They don't actually utilize either one of the kids for their skill set very much.
Yeah.
what the son, he's only used for his mechanical skills once, and that's at the very beginning of the film. Otherwise, he's just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a running gag where he's an adult, but he doesn't act like an adult. I think that he probably was the one that was utilized the least outside of Lucky. They seem to have just been added in for flavor, if that makes sense.
I get
like,
that, but
yeah.
but he actually gets a lot of time on the screen.
He gets a couple of scenes to himself, but so does Lucky.
That's true.
His whole thing doesn't really affect the plot very much. He runs into Slimer.
No, that's true.
Fan service. That's about it.
That's true. Like, you're right. Him and Lucky just kind of get like flung off. Phoebe's there a lot, but they don't utilize her science skills. Like, that was a big thing in the last one. She was like tinkering and inventing things and working on her grandfather's stuff and reverse engineering it. Yep. And this one, the only time she does that in the entire film is
in the end,
when
she's coating it with brass.
Yeah. She coats the thing with brass. So she's underutilized a bit. It's still fun. Like, the characters are fun. And
like, her skill set's underutilized. Phoebe is the main...
she's the main focus.
She's the main focus, and she's the pusher of the plot.
Right.
So
she's the protagonist, like the last one.
Yeah, you can't say that she's, like, underutilized. It's her skill set.
You're right.
Is not...
Her skill set is underutilized, yes. Her skill set is underutilized, and... they have like a new character who's like this one of the nerdy scientist guy who works for Zedmore. He's fun. He's a fun addition. I like him. He's got this like no nonsense kind of like.
Well, he's just a straightforward scientist.
Yeah,
kind of
he's like the straight man in a room full of crazy people, and it's really funny.
It works very well. The thing is that I have to say that this film leaned into the horror elements of Ghostbusters a lot more, which actually I really liked. I liked the fact that they were not pulling punches with the horror elements.
That's what I liked about Afterlife. Same thing.
Exactly. And then the other thing too is that the humor was on point. It's a good film in and of itself. Like, you could label it as a comedy, but it's actually not really a comedy. It seems more like a horror film with a comedic taste.
Like the original Ghostbusters.
Exactly. Yeah.
The original Ghostbusters is not a comedy. It's a horror thriller with comedy,
elements.
Not even like.
Well, it's
built in.
It's character humor.
Yeah, it's character humor. It's built-in humor. So it is technically a comedy, but it's a horror thriller comedy. It's horror thriller first, then comedy is next. But it's not like comedic character, like comic relief comedy. It's integral to the story.
Yeah.
The comedy is baked in, just like it was in the original Ghostbusters. And that was something that was missing from Afterlife. Afterlife didn't have the humor. Until the old characters come in, it doesn't feel like the original Ghostbusters.
So
this one feels like it throughout.
One thing that I have to say, too, is that I feel like this film took off. Like, it took Afterlife as a great launching point, and it really took off and became, like, part of the franchise that started to feel more at home within itself.
Yes.
And the other thing is that Afterlife, I groaned a little bit with all of the fan service that was put in. They really heavy hand that this is part of this universe to try to, like, hey, remember this?
I know exactly what part you're talking about.
Here's a trailer moment.
When the seismologist, the teacher, comes and is like, you don't know any of this stuff? Here's Ghostbusters. Did you know about Ghostbusters? This is Ghostbusters. That was a little heavy-handed.
Yeah.
But I also chuckled a little bit because that felt like a nerd in that universe.
Well, exactly.
Kind of what we were expecting from 2016's.
Yeah.
We kind of expected that kind of... That's what we almost wanted from that movie.
That is
was
what we
like
wanted, yeah.
Fans like that to be the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, though, is that it's a little hand-fisted in. This one does feel more naturally part of the universe.
This one, they only have like 2-3 moments that are really fan service moments. Like, obviously, Slimer comes back, and they have a couple of scenes where they literally do the theme.
Yes.
And they have a couple of things where they kind of reference one of the older films, but at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like you kind of have to pay attention to it a little bit more, whereas in Afterlife, it was really just thrown in your face. Like, there are scenes in it where when they're in the lab, it references the video game when they're in the lab.
Yeah.
And it's in the background where they're shooting pink slime to neutralize a ghost. That's literally from the video game that they're throwing in as a
They
reference.
also
It's in the background.
there's also a couple references to the animated TV series,
which I wouldn't get. That's like the one thing.
Yeah,
Ghostbusters.
there was a couple of those. The animated series was referenced. They referenced. They didn't reference the second Ghostbusters film, the entire bit of the afterlife. They do in this one. Mm-hmm. They talk about the Statue of Liberty incident with the goo. I mean, so there's fan service in, but the fan service is part of the plot rather than being ham-fisted for exposition.
Yeah.
There was only one part in the film. There were two. There were two parts of the film where the exposition felt a little heavy. One was when they were going to the library. Not when he opened the book and was talking about stuff. The little animations, those were actually really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
It's when he goes, "Hey, you want to see something really cool?" And then it's the recording. I was like, okay, so now you're just like going a little overboard.
But I actually really like that too, because it really started to explain the stuff that was happening in that first scene. That first scene
Correct.
hooked you in. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Yes.
That first scene was just cinematic gold.
Yes.
That was probably one of my favorite openings to a film, maybe ever. Because watching it, I was like, I am hooked. I am interested. This is fascinating and mysterious.
And I really liked that. I don't mean like it's the exposition part keeps going.
Yeah, it kind of drags a bit.
It was like 15 minutes of the film was exposition right in a row. I would have liked that to have been broken up a little bit by something, just because it was starting to. I'm like, okay, you're like reading the script to me. Mm-hmm. I was starting to get a little glazed over. Like, hey, let's move along. Let something happen. And then he keeps talking, and he keeps talking, and he keeps talking. I'm like, this is actually fascinating stuff, but I want to see it. And then the action happens. Yeah, exactly. So that was part. But the second one that actually bothered me more was when they go to the fire master's house and they go into the chamber, and they're like, it was a really fascinating scene. Mm-hmm. There's all this stuff, and then they just start talking about it again. I'm like, we know, we just talked about this. Like, I want to know what's going on in this room.
Yeah.
Though they made some good jokes, there were some really fun jokes in that scene. That's humor that I miss actually from the original Ghostbusters, because they had a lot of fun. It gets a little raunchy, but not too much. But that was a lot of that in the first Ghostbusters, especially with Venkman
it's Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver, like Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver, when they're having the scene and the thing, and he's like, Are you the keymaster? And he's like, I can be. Like those are funny. Like that's the kind. Yeah, that was funny. And there were some funny moments, especially when he's like, stop making 6 jokes about my dead grandma,
my recently deceased grandmother. There's a lot of like the thing that I have to give kudos for this film about is that all four actually. She wasn't really a Ghostbuster, but she was part of the team.
Yeah.
All 4 of the original cast members, well, there's 5 actually. 5 people come back. All 5 of them from the original film, when they come back, are all very deep in character, and you can tell. And it feels natural, feels right when they're doing their different interactions and stuff like that, and also just interacting with the world the way that they are.
Especially,
it worked very, very
especially
well.
Dan Aykroyd. Because he's the most part of him. Well, Zimmerman's in it a lot too. Zedmore. Those two are in it a ton, and they're really fantastic. Bill Murray's great as Venkman. He's just not in it as much.
But when he's in it, he's seen stealing.
He is.
He actually is. Like sometimes when
tall, dark, and horny.
Yeah, like he has a lot of really good.
When he just walks into the room and he just busts open the thing and then takes out alcohol.
It's like liquid courage.
It's liquid courage, and I was laughing so hard. He's great. Dan Aykroyd is amazing.
Dan Aykroyd,
but it's not just
so
them.
Yeah.
It's Dan Aykroyd's interactions with the younger characters.
Yeah.
What's his name? Who plays Zedmore?
Ernie Hudson.
Yeah, Ernie Hudson. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ernie Hudson. His interactions with the younger staff, like when he's yelling at
Stance.
No.
Phoebe.
Phoebe. When he's yelling at Phoebe, like he's so. It was so good. Like just the interactions of the characters with the new cast felt legitimate and real. These felt like real conversations. They didn't feel like these characters were shoehorned into the film. Yeah. They felt like they belonged there.
Well, the other thing, too, that I have to just mention really quick, too, is unlike a lot of these continuation series that we've seen recently, specifically in like Disney's realm, it actually pays respect to the characters, and the characters have grown and they stay where they were when they have grown. It actually is it's not just, they're not just there to look cool for the camera,
right?
They're not just there for the trailer, and they're not complete messes in order to bring about this next generation.
That's actually
they
something,
actually honored the characters and kept them true to who they were.
That's actually something that bothered me about the new a good example of what you just said was the Mighty Ducks, the TV series.
Okay.
He's like right back down on his luck again. Like, he learned nothing from all of his time with the Mighty Ducks and everything, the coach.
Okay.
And it just doesn't feel earned. Like, why is he back here again? And then, like, takes, like, a random person to pull him back out of it. He's, like, the rusty old coach that, like, couldn't. And it was just kind of weird. I enjoyed the show, but that particular element just felt weird to me.
Disney's been doing that a lot.
They're taking these old heroes and like turning them into like rusty relics. They did it with
they turned them into washouts.
They did it with Luke Skywalker. They did it with
Indiana Jones.
And you're turning them into washouts, and it's like, it's kind of weird. Like, you're turning heroes into like losers. I don't mind that storyline, but you're doing it with everybody. This was refreshing because they took these characters. In fact, one of the things I actually really liked is Dan Aykroyd's character. He was kind of like down on his luck, but he was enjoying it. He was where he wanted to be. He wasn't a little shopkeep because he was a loser that didn't make it. It's what he wanted to do. He enjoyed it. He had fun. It was his thing, and he was still involved in the Ghostbusting. It was fun for him. Like, that was where he lived.
Yeah, and
he didn't regret it.
Yeah, and they actually have a conversation between him and Zedmore. Zedmore is this hugely successful businessman. Dan Aykroyd owns this little trinket shop that's literally like a pawn shop for haunted items. But when they're talking and they're interacting with each other, Dan Aykroyd is super excited to be back in the field, and he's like, I want to be here, but Zedmore's like, hey, listen, dude, like, this is dangerous. I want you to be safe. I want them to be safe. We have to be smart about this. But Dan Aykroyd has Stance come back out. And Stance is the one that is willing to take the risks. He's willing to go and do all these things. And he has to take a step back and be like, this is what I like. This is who I am. This is what I like to do. But you're right. We need to be smarter about this.
Yeah. So, and he doesn't feel like Dan Aykroyd. He feels like the character he used to play.
Exactly, which is actually
kind of Dan Aykroyd.
We joked because literally we were like, "Oh my gosh, Dan Aykroyd's just being Dan Aykroyd."
It's like the original Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg. But it's just fun. It's a fun movie, and it felt legitimate. It felt earned. The only thing about the plot that was really a problem for me, I guess, is the bad guy like comes and goes really quick, but he does in the original, so it works a little bit. The only other complaint I had that stuck out to me, and it was, we're nitpicking a bit here, but the one thing that actually really did like stab me a little bit, like I felt jarred afterwards, was they never explained the ghost girl, how she meets the horned guy. Yeah. She just works for him. It's like, okay, but like the random ghost teenager works for him out of any other ghost.
Yeah, how is he communicating?
I know, it's not I don't believe it. I want to know why. I was interested in that.
No, that's what I was saying. Is like how do they communicate? And where do they meet? How is it that he has the power to communicate with her, but not really anybody else in the universe?
Also, he doesn't really control her. She's just working. Like, he controls all ghosts, but she's doing it out of her own heart. Yep. She felt unique and different and fun, and I wanted to know why. And my personal thought was, I saw her betraying Phoebe coming from a mile away. That was easy. What I wanted to see was another twist, was something like, was the reason why. It said that she burned down her house. I was expecting her to be one of the fire master. The fire master. I was expecting her to be a fire master, not knowingly, like the other guy. And so that's how she burned down the house. She accidentally burned it down,
killing everyone inside.
Yeah, because she talked about, like, she struck a match and she burned the house down, killed everybody, including herself. But it's like, she struck a match and she controlled the fire, and that's how it happened. And the reason the guy can't control her like the others is because she's a fire master, and he's using her because she's the enemy.
Huge amounts of guilt.
Right.
And like he's manipulating her, and he's doing it on purpose because she's one of the people that could have destroyed him. So
right. It's almost like a poetic justice on his... Yeah, it's irony. It's on his side. He's like, haha, I'm using my enemy against them. This is like fulfilling for me. Like, I enjoy this. But they don't really... Not only do they not do anything with it at all, they don't actually explain it at all. There's really no reason why it would be her out of anyone. And what the plan was. Because, like...
She just so happened to be in contact with the one girl in the one area that knew and could empathize with the one character who is going through a very specific kind of thing that they could both empathize with.
Right.
It's very, very convenient for the sake of the plot. So I agree with you there.
Especially with the horned guy not really having a lot of empathy. Like, he wouldn't know necessarily to use empathy against anyone. Whose plan was this? Or if it is his plan, is he more manipulative than we think? It never really explains any of that, and that actually is a little frustrating, because actually one thing the original Ghostbusters did do is the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper with Zool, it makes it very clear what the intentions are,
right,
and what the manipulations are. And this one, it's like some evil demon overlord that just wants to kill humanity suddenly understands human emotion enough to like use a ghost girl against someone. Doesn't seem like his style.
Right.
Which it couldn't have been. It may have been her idea. Maybe he went to what was going to use her, and she's like, "Hey, I can help you," like, and convinced him to let her do this.
Yeah, like I'll do whatever you want me to do. We don't have to like duke it out. Just let me be with my parents.
Exactly, like
something like that. Like it would have been nice to have a little scene that was like a little flashback to their first interaction and how he got in contact with her, because he's been trapped in a ball the entire time, and it's clear that he has some kind of influence on the world even in the ball.
Exactly.
However,
he's only able to like influence and control like spiritual beings that are close, but it's like limited because of the thing he's in.
And he seems to only be able, like when he's in the headquarters, to manipulate the ghosts that are like within like 10-15 feet of him, but then suddenly he's able to like freeze and move throughout the entire city to communicate.
Also, Phoebe turned herself into a ghost. Did he know she could do that? Like, was that the plan? Or was she just supposed... But I could totally believe she was just supposed to play her friend until they figured something out. That makes sense. Hey, just play her. He's just like, all I want you to do is manipulate her until we can figure out a way to get me out.
Try to get her to somehow find a way to get me out.
Yeah, and then when she had that idea, Ghost Girl's like, oh, here we go. This is how we're going to do it. And just lets her roll. Makes sense. But they don't really... You have to conjecture a lot of it, and which is normally I'm okay with. A little bit of conjecture, but literally you have to like string in half the plot. This is less about... They don't spoon feed you in this whole movie, which I appreciate, but there are also some things they just leave out entirely that I feel should be here.
Yeah.
And there's some of those moments we talked about where it's really slow on the build-up. They could have put that in there instead. Mm-hmm. A little more of her backstory in there. Even if it's just a short 5-minute flashback would have been enough. Like they do in like a heist film, where they go back and show the plan or the interactions. Just show me what the plan was there. Because it doesn't seem believable by what you showed me. Yeah. It seems like they literally just got lucky as hell.
No,
it seems like they got really lucky.
No, it seems that what happened was that Dan Aykroyd put his script down and used the ball to hold the script in place, and then the ball read the script. It was like, oh, ghost thing. This is how I do it.
Yeah, the convoluted nature in which Phoebe has to get him out feels contrived, very contrived, because it doesn't feel earned, or it feels like it built up to it. Well, it just like happens, and then the girl's like, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. And you're like, how did you know this was going to work?
Well, and
how did you know any of this was going to happen? This makes no sense.
And it's a hairstring, like it's a hairstring thin line.
Yes.
To the conclusion that they wanted to do. So it's like, it's too much of Phoebe doing it on her own for it to be a grand master plan.
It almost would have made more sense if they convinced Phoebe to release him for them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Phoebe, if you release him, you could have what you want. Like, that would have made more sense. And then because they know she's smart.
Yeah.
Like, they're expecting her to find a way to do it. But they expected her she had to turn herself into a ghost specifically. How would the ghost girl even know she could do that?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like she literally... One, the ghost girl couldn't have known about the theoretical idea. But the other thing, too, is that she doesn't really even encourage Phoebe to do it that much. She's like...
Not only that, but Phoebe never even shows that was a possibility. Phoebe figured that out on her own. Nobody else would have known that was a possibility except for her.
Yeah.
So how would the ghost... I mean, it literally seems like the ghost girl just became friends with her and just waited for her to do something dumb. And it got lucky.
Yeah.
And I guess, to be fair, the ghosts don't really... They could have manipulated her for 5 years, and that's what it took. He's been in there for millennia. He's probably pretty patient at this point. But But none of that feels earned or natural. It's shoehorned in, like you said. Like, he read the plot and figured out what... It's like that moment in Robin Hood Men in Tights where they read the script.
Oh, yeah. Do I lose? And then the rules change because the script says that the rules change?
Yeah, or like in Spaceballs where, like, they watch the video of what's happening in the future.
So they fast forward to figure out where they are, yeah. It kind of feels like that a little bit. That is, like, a major issue. That's, like, the one major issue that...
That's the only legitimate, real, harsh complaint, and the biggest reason that I gave it an 8 out of a 10 is for that. For this contrived moment where it all goes together with a couple characters that weren't really well utilized in those moments.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Those are the things that really hit hard against this film.
Speaking of hitting things hard, hit that like button. Let us know your thoughts further in the comments below. What did you think about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire? Is it a worthy sequel, or do you hate it and it ruined everything about 1984's Ghostbusters for you? Let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, we like to talk about a variety of different topics every Wednesday and do a new review that we release every Saturday. At some point after a year of doing this, you think that I would learn how to talk.
No, it just gets worse.
But you know what would make it better? If people subscribed and shared us with their friends.
Like and subscribe. It will heal me.
It'll encourage me to actually care about what I'm saying.
Oh, gosh.
And how I'm saying it. I'll take vocal lessons if we get 1,000 subscribers.
Next we'll be like, I'm dying of an unknown illness, but if you like and subscribe, it will heal me miraculously.
Feed my narcissistic energy enough that I have the will to live.
Oh, gosh. All right.
Anyway, guys, we'll see you guys in the next video.
Thanks for watching.